Have you ever had one of those brilliant ideas, a flash of inspiration that feels completely 100% yours? Well, what if I told you that idea might actually be a ghost? A memory you totally forgot you even had, now haunting you as a new creation. That's the strange and kind of spooky phenomenon we're going to dive into.
It sounds like a total contradiction, right? An honest thief? But this is the central mystery we're exploring. Can your own mind actually trick you into believing someone else's idea is your own? The answer is a fascinating and, let's be honest, a slightly unsettling yes.
So, to see how this plays out in the real world, we've got to start with one of the most famous cases of creative theft in music history. It involves a Beatle, a massive hit song, and a multi-million-dollar lawsuit.
Okay, so back in 1971, George Harrison releases My Sweet Lord, and it's a monster hit all over the world. But pretty soon, he gets sued. The claim? That his song is a direct copy of He's So Fine, a hit from the 60s. Now, here's where it gets really interesting. Harrison's defense was, well, it was wild. He basically admitted the songs were super similar, but he swore he didn't do it on purpose. And in a landmark ruling, the court actually agreed, finding him guilty of, get this, subconscious plagiarism. He had stolen the melody without even realizing it.
This case just opens up this huge question, right? I mean, it's one thing to forget a name or where you left your keys, but how on earth does your brain forget the source of an entire melody while remembering the melody itself perfectly? This isn't just some legal curiosity, it's a real, documented psychological phenomenon.
So, what do we call this strange mental glitch? It's not just a legal term, it's a very specific quirk of our human memory. And yeah, psychologists have a name for it, cryptomnesia.
And this right here is the key. Cryptomnesia is not deliberate theft. It's a memory bias. Your brain serves up an old memory, could be a tune, a phrase, an idea, but it forgets to attach that little tag that says, hey, by the way, you got this from somewhere else. So you just experience it as this moment of pure, original genius.
And look, this isn't some new age pop psychology. This idea has a long and pretty weird history. The first documented case goes all the way back to 1874. It involved a spiritual medium who thought he was channeling spirits, but was actually just reciting details from a newspaper article he'd read and completely forgotten. The term cryptomnesia was coined shortly after that, and even heavy hitters like Carl Jung were analyzing it over a century ago.
Okay, so it has this long history, but what does modern science say? I mean, does this phenomenon actually hold up under scrutiny? Let's take a look at the evidence from the lab.
This number is just stunning. In the first real scientific studies on cryptomnesia, they put people in groups to brainstorm ideas. Simple enough. But later, when they asked them to recall only their own original ideas, people claimed ideas that weren't theirs between 3 and 9% of the time. Now think about that for a second. In a controlled lab, people were unintentionally stealing ideas from others in the room just moments after hearing them.
The scientific explanation for this is a breakdown in something called source monitoring. You can think of this as your brain's internal filing system for remembering where you got information from. And when that system glitches, you're just left with the information itself, but with absolutely no context. The memory becomes this free-floating idea.
So, how does this actually happen? Well, it's most common when you're distracted or your brain is just plain busy, what scientists call being under a high cognitive load. Maybe you hear a song in a noisy cafe, or you read a sentence in a book when you're really tired. Your brain stores the idea, sure, but it fails to tag the source properly. Then weeks, months, or even years later, that idea pops back into your head, totally scrubbed clean of its origins, feeling brand new.
And if you're sitting there thinking this only happens in a lab, think again. History is absolutely filled with famous creative minds who've been haunted by these exact same memory ghosts.
This is Robert Louis Stevenson, the author of Treasure Island. Years after publishing his masterpiece, he stumbled upon a book by Washington Irving and was horrified. He wrote that the whole inner spirit and a good deal of the material detail of his first few chapters were already in that book. He'd read it as a young man, totally forgotten about it, and then unknowingly reproduced it, believing the whole time it was, in his words, original as sin.
And here's another one for you. Umberto Eco, who wrote The Name of the Rose, described finding an old book on his shelf that was eerily similar to a key plot device in his own famous novel. He realized he must have just skimmed it when he was young, and that the idea had just laid there dormant for decades before resurfacing, making him believe he had invented it all on his own.
I mean, the pattern here is undeniable.
We've talked about Harrison and Stevenson, but the list just keeps going. Even Helen Keller was accused of plagiarism for a story called The Frost King, which turned out to be an unconscious memory of a fairy tale that had been read to her years before. The whole incident apparently left her devastated.
Seriously, the list goes on and on. The philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche, the author Colleen McCullough, they both reported similar experiences. And for a more modern and kind of funny example, there's a fantastic story about Steven Tyler from Aerosmith. He heard a song on the radio, thought it was great, and suggested to his bandmate Joe Perry that they should record a cover. And Perry's response? "It is us, you idiot." He didn't even recognize his own song.
So, after all these stories about rock stars, philosophers, and famous authors, what does this actually mean for the rest of us, for our own ideas?
The big takeaway here is that cryptomnesia isn't some rare brain malfunction. It's a normal, fundamental feature of how our memory actually works. This suggests that maybe creativity isn't always about making something from nothing, but about connecting old, forgotten ideas in totally new ways. Our brains are constantly absorbing information, and this is just the messy, unpredictable way they sometimes put all the pieces back together.
And that's really the crucial difference. Deliberate plagiarism is all about intent. It's a conscious choice to deceive. Cryptomnesia is the complete opposite. There is zero intent. It's an unconscious act of recall where the person genuinely believes the idea is their own. So one is a flaw in your character, and the other is just a flaw in your memory. A distinction that keeps challenging our legal definitions of originality and ownership even today.
And all of this leaves us with one final lingering thought. That amazing idea you had in the shower this morning, that clever turn of phrase you came up with at work, where did it really come from? What brilliant idea is sitting in your mind right now that you've simply forgotten you ever heard?